Hey there, it's Mr. Leatherwood, and today we are going to talk about percents. First thing I want you to know about percents is that percent means out of 100. This is going to be very helpful as you do percents. So if you do 35%, it's going to mean 35 out of 100. Very important when you're working with percents. Couple of different ways to work with percents. We have a problem here. Ben and his friends ate at Olive Garden. Their bill was $63.20. If they leave a 15% tip, how much is their total bill? So we are finding 15% of $63.20. One way that I like to do it, maybe my favorite way, is to estimate. And what I mean by that is I'm going to hold on to $63.20, but I'm going to find 10% of $63.20, $63.20. And most of us are pretty good at knowing if we're finding 10% of something, we're dividing it into 10 equal parts. So if we divide $63.20 into 10 equal parts, we get $6.32. Okay, which if you notice, there's a little trick. We just moved over the decimal one place. Well, that's 10%. I need 15%. So then to get 15%, that means I need 5% of $63.20. And if 10% was $6.32, to get 5% of that, I just need to divide it by 2. And if I divide $6.32 by 2, I think I get $3.16. Some of you may needed to write that out. I'm sure I did earlier on. So then I have 10%, check. I have 5%, check. That totals to be 15%. And so I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to add these together. And if I add them together, I get $9.48 as my 15% of $63.20. Now for this problem, I would have to add the $63.20 plus the $9.48 to find out the total bill, but right now I'm just showing you a way to figure out percent of a number. This is one of my favorite ways, and I would argue that most adults, this is what we use when we're walking through the store or if we're at a restaurant trying to figure out a bill, is we would find 10% of it, cut that in half, add them together, and then figure out your tip. So just a cool little way to do it. Second way that I wanted to show you is use the percent bar. And a percent bar, be drawn just as a bar. And if we're finding 75% of $250, a percent bar is, I'm going to put, at one point of the bar, I'm going to put percent. So 0% and 100%. So if I fill up this entire bar, that's going to be 100% of our bar. On the top of the bar, I have 0, and I have my total number that I'm looking for. So in this case, 250 is what I'm looking for. So if I filled up the entire bar, I would have 250 of whatever I'm talking about. So on 100%, I'm trying to find 75%. I know that if I cut my bar into fourths, that this would be 25%, 50%, 75%. That's a 7, not a 2. Hopefully you're okay with that part. So since I cut my percent bar into fourths, I'm also going to cut my 250 into fourths. And if you can't do that, let's do 250 divided by 4, and that ends up being, whoops, wrong marker, 62.5 for each fourth. So 62.5 times 2 will give us our half, which you can notice we can check 125 times 2 is 250, so we're on the right pace. And then I'm going to add 62.5 to 125 to get 187.5. And so on our percent bar, what we're looking for is we need 75%, so there would be 25%. there would be 50%, and there would be 75%. So where they match, our 75% will give us our answer of 187.5. So it's kind of a cool way to do it. Here's another example. Why don't you go ahead and try to make a percent bar, and then in just a second I will show you what the percent bar should look like. So go ahead and pause the video, and then I'll come back and let you know how to do this one. So I went ahead and got us started. I have a percent bar. You'll notice on the bottom I have 0 and I have 100%. Let's go ahead and label that as 100%. And then on the top I'm going to do 0 and I'm going to do 130. Now you'll notice, since we were looking at 30%, I went ahead and broke my percent bar into 10 equal parts. Or they should be 10 equal parts. They're almost equal. And so what I would do, or the reason I did 10 equal parts, is because now I could do 10%, 20%, what we're looking for are 30%, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and then our full bar would be 100%. So now what I have to do is divide my 130 by 10 equal parts. Since I cut my bottom portion into 10 equal parts, I'm going to cut my top portion into 10 equal parts. And like we talked about earlier, we're going to divide 130 into 10 equal parts, so we get 13, and then we get 26, and then we get 39. And we could keep on going if we wanted, if we need to figure out 40%, 50%, whatever. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and stop because we are looking for our 30%. So we have our 10%, our 20%, and then our 30%. So for our answer, our 30% of 130 will give us 39. So hopefully you were able to do that on your own. Let me give you one more strategy. So this one says find 23% of 400. Another way that some people like to do percents are to turn your percent into a decimal or a fraction and multiply. So we said earlier that percent means out of 100, so 23% would be either 23 hundredths or 23 hundredths, either as a fraction or a decimal. So if we're doing 23% of 400, most of us know in math that of means multiply. So we would multiply times 400, or over here we would multiply times 400. And so we would do 23 times 400, and we would get a very big number. But we're going to end up dividing by 100, so it equals 92. I like fractions, but a lot of people like to do it with decimals. So with the decimal, go ahead and multiply this way. 0, 0, 12. I'm done with my 3, so I'm going to add a 0. 2 and 0, 0, 8. So we end up getting the same thing. And our decimal place goes here. If you don't know where to find decimal or put your decimal place in multiplication, I have a good video for that too. Check my YouTube channel. But you get 92 both ways. So this is a really cool way to find percent of a number too if you don't like the percent bars. Every once in a while, they're going to give us a problem that doesn't give us a percent. We're trying to figure out the percent. So it says 16 is what percent of 25? The way I like to do problems like this is to set up a ratio or a proportion. And so one thing you need to know in order to do that is we have our percent. You need to know that percent is really just a part to whole relationship. So for instance, on this one, I could do, I don't know my percent, so I'm going to keep that a variable. And then I know is what percent of 25. So I know that 16 is my part and my whole is going to be 25. So now all I have to realize is that, oh, 25 times 4 is going to give me 100. And so all I have to do is 16 times 4, and that's going to give me my percent. So my percent would end up equaling 64 over 100, or we would say our percent is 64%. I really like this way. I like using proportions to solve things. Let's try another one, see how you do. Go ahead and try this one. 72% of what number is 54? Pause the video and then I'll show you how to do it. So we have, remember, our percent is a part to whole relationship. So I'm just going to fill in our information. I know we have 72%. And I'm going to put that over 100. That's our part and our whole. 72 out of 100 is what number, of what number is 54. So 72% of what number is 54. So I think 54 in this case is going to be our part, and we are missing our whole. So what I need to figure out is how I went from this number to this number. Now obviously 72 to 54 isn't the easiest thing. So what I would like to do is go down first. So I am going to simplify this a little bit and divide by 4, and that's going to get me 25 and 18. Now how this helps is now, if I write that down here, I can do times 3 times 3, and 18 times 3 is 54, and so 25 times 3 is going to give us our answer of 75. So 75 is the whole. If I would do 72% of 75, I would get 54. Okay, the last thing I wanted to talk about is just transferring from a fraction to a decimal to a percent. And so in this case, we have 3/15, which for me, to switch it to a decimal, I really need it to be out of 10, out of 100, maybe out of 1,000, and so on. 3/15 I can't get to be out of 100 easily. So in this case, what I would do is simplify. I would divide by 3, and I would get 1/5. Well, 1/5 is pretty easy to make it out of 10. I just do times 2 and I get 2/10, or 2 over 2, excuse me. I get 2/10. Well, now if I have 2/10, that's pretty easy to write as a decimal. It's just the same number, 2/10. And as a percent, remember, percent means out of 100. So I'm going to make my decimal out of 100. So it's 20 hundredths, which would mean that is 20%. Or maybe over here where I have my 2/10, I'm going to make it out of 100. So 10 times 10 and 2 times 10. So you'll notice 20 over 100 is also going to equal my 20%. Okay, what if they give you a decimal? So we have 4 hundredths. So as a fraction, I'm just going to say that 4 hundredths. And I really like switching it to a fraction before I go to a percent, because now I have 4 out of 100. Since percent means out of 100, my percent is just going to be 4%. Ta-da! Hopefully this has helped you, given you plenty of strategies to work with percents. Good luck, and yeah, bye-bye.